Good afternoon. We are here with another mediumship literature group. We meet every Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific time. Everybody's welcome to join us in our live discussions, which is what we are doing now. We are reading the Spirits book by Allan Kardec. We have finished the Gospel According with Spiritism, and we are starting this one now. So if you want to join us, contact me through my Facebook page, Revenant, or my website, Revenant.world, and I'll be happy to add you to our group. It's free of charge, and everybody's welcome. All right, let's do our initial prayer, and we're going to start reading. Dear God, thank you for this day, for this wonderful opportunity to be here together, learning from you, through this book, through these readings. Help us to understand the things we need to learn and put in practice in our daily lives, and in order for us to evolve as spirits. Thank you for your unconditional love. Amen. All right, so we are on chapter 3 of the book, first book, Creation. Who would like to start reading?
I'm a little bit lost if somebody knows where it is in the PDF.
Yeah, do you have a page number?
It's chapter 3, Creation. I guess I can start reading if
Thank you.
that's all right. Yeah, Creation.
Do you happen to know which page number it is in the PDF, Elizabeth?
It doesn't have a page number. Oh, wait. 70. Oh, it's page 74. I just see it out there.
Makes sense.
Awesome, thanks.
74.
Thank you.
Got it.
Okay. Find it, Catherine.
Almost there.
Okay.
You guys start, and I'll be there in a sec.
Okay. Creation. 1, formation of worlds. 2, production of living being. 3, peopling of the earth, Adam. 4, diversity of human race. 5, plurality of world. 6, the biblical account of the creation. Formation of worlds. The universe comprises the infinity of worlds, both of those we see and those we do not see, all animate and inanimate beings, all the stars that revolve in space, and all fluids with which space is filled. 37. Has the universe been created, or has it existed from all eternity like God? Assuredly, the universe could not have made itself. And if it had existed from all eternity like God, it could not be the work of God. Reason tells us that the universe cannot have made itself, and that as it could not be the work of chance, it must be the work of God. 38. How did God create the universe? To borrow a well-known expression, by his will, nothing can give a better idea of the action of that all-powerful will than those grand words of Genesis. God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. 39. Can we know how worlds are formed? All that can be said on this subject within the limits of your comprehension is this: worlds are formed by the condensation of the matter disseminated in space. 40. Are comets, as now supposed, a commencement of condensation of the primitive matter, worlds in course of formation? Yes, but it is absurd to believe in the influence attributed to them. I mean, the influence which is commonly attributed to them. for all the heavenly bodies have their share of influence in the production of certain physical phenomena. 41, is it possible for a completely formed world to disappear and for the matter of which it is composed to be again disseminated in space? Yes, God renews worlds as he renews the living beings that inhabit them. 42, can we know the length of time employed in the formation of worlds of the earth, for instance? This is a matter in regard to which I can tell you nothing, for it is only known to the Creator, and foolish indeed would he be who should pretend to possess such knowledge or to number the ages of such a formation. Should I stop there or keep going?
Any questions or comments so far? So just one little thing, in my version, what you have being defined as worlds is here described as planets. So when they say the formation of the worlds, it's just the same as formation of the planets. So just to clarify. So we can continue.
Production of living beings. 43, when did the earth begin to be peopled? In the beginning, all was chaos. The elements were mixed up in a state of confusion. Gradually, those elements settled into their proper places, and then appeared the orders of living beings appropriate to the successive states of the globe. 44, whence came the living beings that appeared upon the earth? The germs of these were contained in the earth itself, awaiting the favorable moment for their development. The organic principles came together on the cessation of the force which held them asunder, and those principles formed the germs of all living beings that have peopled the earth. Those germs remain latent and inert, like the chrysalis and the seed of plants, until the arrival of the proper moment for the vivification of each species. The beings of each species then came together and multiplied. 55, where were the organic elements before the formation of the earth? They existed, so to say, in the fluidic state in space, in the midst of the spirits, or in other planets awaiting the creation of the earth in order to begin a new existence on a new globe. Chemistry shows us the molecules of inorganic bodies uniting to produce crystals of regular forms that are invariable for each species. As soon as those molecules find themselves in their conditions necessary to their combination, the slightest disturbance of those conditions suffices it to prevent the union of the material elements, or at least to prevent the regular arrangement of the latter, which constitutes the crystal. Why should not the same action take place among the organic elements? We preserve for years the seeds of plants and of animals, which are only vivified at a certain temperature and under certain conditions. Grains of wheat have been seen to germinate after the lapse of centuries. Then in seeds a latent principle of vitality, which only awaits the concourse of favorable circumstances to develop itself. May not that which takes place under our eyes every day have also taken place at the origin of the globe? Is this view of the formation of living beings brought forth out of chaos by the action of the forces of nature itself detract in any way from the glory of God. So far from doing this, the view of creation thus presented to us is more constant than any other, with our sense of the vastness of his power exerting its sway over all the worlds of infinity through the action of universal laws. This theory, it is true, does not solve the problem of the origin of the vital elements, but nature has mysteries which it is as yet impossible for us to explain. 46, do any living beings come into existence spontaneously at the present day? Yes, but the primal germs of these already existed in a latent state. You are constantly witnesses of this phenomenon. Do not the tissues of the body and of animals contain the germs of a multitude of parasites that only await for their development the occurrence of the putrid fermentation necessary to their life? Each of you contain a slumbering world of microscopic beings in process of creation. 47, was the human species among the organic elements contained in the terrestrial globe? Yes, and it made its appearance at the time appointed by the Creator. Hence the statement that man was formed out of the dust of the ground. 48, can we ascertain the epoch of tidal appearance of man and of the other living beings on the earth? No, all your calculations are chimerical. 49. If the germs of the human race were among the organic elements of the globe, why are human beings not produced spontaneously at the present day as they were at the time of its origin? The first beings of things is hidden from us. Nevertheless, it may be asserted that the earliest progenitors of the human race, when once brought into existence, absorbed in themselves the elements necessary to their formation in order to transmit those elements according to the laws of reproduction. The same may be said in regard to all the different species of living beings. Should I stop there?
Any questions or comments?
Any questions? I wasn't sure what chimerical on 48.
In French, we say chimère, so it's more like a make-believe ish, like a make-believe something.
Yeah, it means it's speculation. It's speculative. It's like it's a guess. It's not precise. It's about the calculation of the time where the human beings started, right? That's the answer they gave for this question, correct? That's what you're saying? So they're saying your scientific calculations are only speculative. So it's not precise. So nobody knows for sure. Okay, so let's continue on population of the earth, Adam and Eve.
I can do a little bit.
Okay, thanks, Kat.
It's your burden.
Thanks.
People of the earth, Adam. Did the human race begin with one man only? No, he whom you call Adam was neither the first nor the only man who peopled the earth. Is it possible to know at what period Adam lived? About the period which he was assigned to him, that is to say, about 4,000 years before Christ. The man of whom, under the name Adam, tradition has preserved the memory, was one of those who, in some of the countries of the globe, survived one of the great cataclysm, which at various epochs have changed its surface, and who became the founder of one of the races that people the earth at the present day. The laws of nature render it impossible that the amount of progress which we know to have been accomplished by the human race of our planet long before the time of Christ could have been accomplished so rapidly, as must have been the case if it had only been in existence upon the globe since that period assigned as the date of Adam. The opinion most consonant with reason is that which regards of the story of Adam as a myth, or as an allegory personifying the earliest ages of the world. Diversity of human races. 52. What is the cause of the physical and moral differences that distinguish the various races of men upon the earth? Climate, modes of life, and social habits. The same differences would be produced in the case of two children under the same of the same mother. If brought up far from another, one surrounded by different influences and conditions, for the children thus diversely brought up would present no moral resemblance to each other. Did the human race come into existence on various points of the globe? Yes, and at various epochs. And this is one of the causes of the diversity of human races. The people of the primitive periods, being dispersed abroad in different climates and forming alliances with those of other countries than their own, gave rise perpetually to new types of humanity. Do those differences constitute distinct species? Certainly not. All of them constitute but a single family. Do the differences between the varieties of the same fruit prevent their all belonging to the same species? 54. If the human species does not proceed from the same progenitor, should they, on that account, cease to regard one another as brothers? All men are brothers in virtue of their common relation to the Creator, because they are animated by the same spirit and tend towards the same goal. The human mind is always prone to attach too literal a meaning to statements which are necessarily imperfect and incomplete. Plurality of words. Should I continue?
Yes, please.
Okay. 55. Are all the globes that revolve in space inhabited? Yes, and the people of the earth are far from being, as you suppose, the first in intelligence, goodness, and general development. There are many men having a high opinion of themselves who even imagine that your little globe alone, of all the countless myriads of globes around you, has the privilege of being inhabited by reasoning beings. They fancy that God has created the universe only for them. Insensate vanity. God has peopled the globes of the universe with living beings, all of whom concur in working out the aims of his providence. To believe that the presence of living beings is confined to the one point of the universe inhabited by us is to cast a doubt on the wisdom of God, who has made nothing in vain, and who must therefore have assigned to all the other globes of the universe a destination more important than that of gratifying our eyes with the spectacle of a starry night. Moreover, there is nothing in the position, size, or physical constitution of the earth to warrant the supposition that it alone, on the countless myriads of globes disseminated throughout the infinity of a past, has the privilege of being inhabited. 56. Is the physical constitution of all globes the same? No, they do not at all resemble one another. 57. The physical constitution of the various worlds not being the same for all, does it follow that the beings who inhabited them have different organizations? Undoubtedly, it does. Just as in your world, fishes are organized for living in the water and birds for living in the air. 58. Are the planets furthest removed from the sun stinted in light and heat, the sun only appearing to them of the size of one of the fixed stars? Do you suppose that there are no other sources of light and heat than the sun? And do you count for nothing the action of electricity, which in certain worlds play a very much more important part than in your earth? Besides, how do you know that the beings of those worlds see in the same manner as you do, and with the aid of organs such as yours? The conditions of existence for the beings who inhabit the various worlds must be supposed to be appropriate to the sphere in which they are destined to live. If we had never seen fishes, we should be at a loss to understand how any living being could exist in the sea. So in regard to all the other worlds, which doubtless contain elements that are unknown to us, in our own earth, are not the long polar nights illuminated by the electrical displays of the aurora borealis? Is it impossible that in certain worlds, electricity may be more abundant than in ours and may subvert in a general economy various important uses not imaginable by us? And may not those worlds contain in themselves the sources of the heat and light required by their inhabitants? Should I keep going?
Yes. Then you can discuss all together, unless you has questions or comments.
That's just something to think about. That was just something important to think about, because we never think of, like, I know I always think of, like, how do people live in such conditions at times? And it's because they adapt to live that way. And you know that we never think of that. Like,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah.
Very, very interesting. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
The biblical account of the creation. 59. The different nations of the earth have formed to themselves widely divergent ideas of the creation, ideas always in harmony with their degree of scientific advancement. Reason and science concur in admitting the fantastic character of certain theories. The explanation of the subject now given through spirit communication is confirmatory of the opinion which has long been adopted by the most enlightened exponents of modern science. This explanation will no doubt be objected to on the ground that it is in contradiction with the statements of the Bible. But a careful examination of those statements show us that this contradiction is more apparent than real, and that it results from the interpretation which has been given to expressions whose meaning is allegorical rather than historical. The question of the personality of Adam, regarded as the first man and sole progenitor of the human race, is not the only one in regard to which the religious convictions of the world have necessarily undergone modification. The hypothesis of the rotation of the earth round the sun appeared at one time to be in such utter opposition to the letter of the Bible that every species of persecution was directed against it and against those who had advocated it. Yet the earth continued to move on in its orbit in defiance of anathemas, and no one at the present day could contest the fact of its movement without doing violence to his own powers of reasoning. The Bible also tells us that the world was created in 6 days, and fixes the epoch of this creation at about 4,000 years before the Christian era. Previously to that period, the earth did riot exist. At that period, it was produced out of nothing. Such is the formal declaration of the sacred text. Yet science, positive, inexorable steps in with proof to the contrary. The history of the formation of the globe is written in indestructible characters in the worlds of fossils, proving beyond the possibility of denial that the 6 slays of the creation are successive periods, each of which may have been of millions of ages. This is not a mere matter of statement or of opinion. It is a fact as incontestably certain as is the motion of the earth, and one that theology itself can no longer refuse to admit, although this admission furnishes another example of the errors into which we are led by attributing literal truth to language, which is often of a figurative nature. Are we therefore to conclude that the Bible is a mere tissue of errors? No, but we must admit that men have erred in their method of interpreting it. Geology, in its study of the archives written in the structure of the globe itself, has ascertained the order of succession in which the different species of living being have appeared on its surface. And this order is found to be in accordance with the sequence indicated in the book of Genesis, with this difference, viz., that the earth, instead of issuing miraculously from the hand of God in the course of a few days, accomplished its formation under the impulsion of the divine will, but according to the laws and through the action of the forces of nature, in the course of periods incalculable by us. Does God appear less great and less powerful for having accomplished the work of creation through the action of forces and according to laws of his own ordaining? And is it the result of the creative energy less sublime for not having been accomplished instantaneously? Evidently not. And puerile indeed must he the mind that does not recognize the grandeur of the almighty power implied in this evolution of the worlds of the universe through the action of eternal laws. Science, so far from diminishing the glory of the divine action, displays that action under an aspect still more sublime and more consonant with our intuitive sense of the power and majesty of God, by showing that it has been accomplished without derogation from the laws which are the expression of the divine in the realm of nature. Modern science, in accordance with the Mosaic record, proves that man was the last in the order of creation of living things, living beings. But Moses puts the universal deluge at the year of the world 1654, while geology seems to show that the great diluvian cataclysm occurred before the appearance of man, because up to the present time, the primitive strata contains no traces of his presence, nor of that of the animals contemporaneous with him. But this point is far from being decided. Various recent discoveries suggest the possibility of our being destined to ascertain that the antiquity of the human race is much greater than it has been hitherto supposed. And should this greater antiquity become a matter of certainty, it would prove that the letter of the Bible, in regard to the date assigned by it to the creation of man, as in regard to so many other matters, can only be understood in an allegorical sense, that the geological deluge is not that of Noah, is evidence from the lapse of time required for the formation of the fossiliferous strata. And if traces should eventually be discovered of the existence of the human race before the geological deluge, it would be evident either that Adam was not the first man, or that his creation dates back from a period indefinitely remote. There is no arguing against fact, and the antiquity of the human race, if proved by geological discovery, would have to be admitted, just as has been done in regard to the movement of the earth in the 6 days of the creation. The existence of the human race before the geological deluge, it may be objected, is still doubtful, but the same objection cannot be urged against the following considerations. Admitting that men first appeared upon the earth 4,000 years before Christ, if the whole of the human race, with the exception of a single family, were destroyed 1650 years afterwards, 1,650 years afterwards, it follows that the peopling of the earth dates only from the time of Noah. That is to say, only 2,500 years before Christ. But when the Hebrews immigrated to Egypt in the 18th century before Christ, they found that country densely populated and already in possession of an advanced civilization. History also shows that at the same period, India and various other countries were equally populous and flourishing. To say nothing of the chronological tables of other nations, which claim to go back to periods yet more remote. We must therefore suppose that from the 24th to the 18th century before Christ, that is to say in the space of 600 years, the posterity of a single individual was able to people all the immense countries which had been discovered, not to speak of those which were then unknown, but which we have no reason to conclude were destitute of inhabitants. And we must suppose still further that the human race during this brief period was able to raise itself from the crass ignorance of the primitive savage state to the highest degree of intellectual development suppositions utterly irreconcilable with anthropological laws. The diversity of the human races confirm this view of the subject. Climate and modes of life undoubtedly modified the physical characteristics of mankind, but we know the extent to which that these modifications can be carried, and physiological examination conclusively proves that there are between the different races of men constitutional differences too profound to have been produced merely by the difference of climate. The crossing of races produces intermediary types. It tends to efface the extremes of characteristics peculiarities, but it does not produce these peculiarities, and it therefore creates only new varieties. But the crossing of races presupposes the existence of races distinct from each other. And how is the existence of these to be explained if we attribute their origin to a common stock, especially if we restrict the production of these various races to so brief a period? How is it possible to suppose, for example, that the descendants of Noah could have been, in so short a time, transformed into Ethiopians? Such a metamorphosis would be as inadmissible as that of a wolf into a sheep, or a beetle into an elephant, or a bird into a fish. No preconceived opinion can withstand in the long run the evidence of opposing facts. But on the contrary, all difficulty disappears if we assume that man existed at a period anterior to that which has hitherto been commonly assigned to his creation, that Adam commenced some 6,000 years ago, the peopling of a country until then uninhabited, that the deluge of Noah was a local catastrophe, erroneously confounded with the great geological cataclysm. And finally, if we make due allowance for the allegorical form of the expression of characteristic of the Oriental style and common to the sacred books of every people, it is unwise to insist upon a literal interpretation or figurative statement, of which the inaccuracy may at any moment be rendered evident by the progress of scientific discovery. But the fundamental propositions of religion, so far from having anything to fear from the discoveries of science, are strengthened and ennobled by being brought into harmony with those discoveries. And it is only when the religious sentiment shall have been enlightened by its union with scientific truth that religious belief, thus rendered invulnerable to the attacks of skepticism, will take the place of skepticism in the minds and hearts of men.
Okay, questions and comments?
I believe in aliens.
What's that?
So I believe in aliens. That's all.
That's all you got?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you guys understood from all that, from this whole chapter? At least the main idea. There's a lot of things, a lot of important information, but what is the main idea that
Are they? Oh, sorry. Are they questioning the Bible a little bit, the truth of Bible a little bit in it, or
No.
is just my English is not good?
So
Is that what-
just a reminder, so the questions are brought from the mediums and the answers are coming from spirits, okay?
Yeah.
It's not man talking, this is spirits talking themselves.
And the spirits are the kind of saying that. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, what they are saying is that we don't need to compartmentalize things the way it has been or the way it still is for some people that are religious. They are saying that the Bible brings things in a symbolic way, in a way that, like, imagine, especially in Old Testament, the Old Testament was written 2,000 years before Christ. And even in the days of Christ, people had no scientific development as we have now. They are not 100% ignorant of science. So because the Egyptians were very well developed, there were so many countries, many cultures in ancient history that has very, very well developed history, science, but they still could not understand things that we can understand now. Not that we are on the top of the top. We still have a lot to develop ourselves, our brains, and ourselves as individuals and as spirits. We still need to develop a lot to be able to understand things further. But so the knowledge of energy, for example, did not really exist at that time. People could not grasp things that now we know through science and explains the origin of the universe, for example, which is the subject of this chapter, in a literal way. they needed to be explained or written or shared in a way that they could understand, which is symbolic. So when they say, when in the Bible is written like that, God created the world in 6 days, how could that combine with evolution, with the science? That's why there has this dichotomy between religion and science. Science is against religion, and religion is against science. And all they are saying is that it's not conflicting at all. All we need to do is to understand the things in a not literal way. It was written in a symbolic way, in a way that they could understand at that time, but yet the 6 days symbolize the 6 eras, the 6 main eras that we had from the beginning of our planet, our own universe, the way we know it, that things happened, like landmarks happened, and then it created the different phenomena. One of the first things that God created was the light. And then we go to science, we have the Big Bang. It's all parallel. All it takes is for us to understand things in a more symbolic way. And everything is congruent. Science and religion is no longer conflicting. And that's beautiful, right? So the fact that God created and designed and created all this universe in millennia of years, like in times that we cannot even conceive, does not diminish his power or the beauty of the creation itself. So, and the other thing they say is that how could such a complex universe that is pretty much very well organized, nothing happens by chance, like there's, for example, the example that they gave, like when we die, when an animal die, being like any kind of animal, including us, the fermentation of the body after we die give birth to the latent beings that is already inside of us that are able to come alive, which is the worms and the germs and all those creatures that eat us when after we die, eat our body, our flesh after we die. So all those things have is precisely organized, and things depend on one another. Things are very harmoniously related to one another in the universe. The planets don't crash with each other. They have their own orbits. They have like the systems, the galaxies, they have their own suns, and there are different kinds of suns, different numbers of suns, different numbers of moons. And different planets have different kind of beings to adapt to their nature, the exposure of the light, but they have different quantities of electricity to compensate all that. So how can all this complexity and this perfectionist reality could be created by chance, right? So it has from behind supreme intelligence, which we call God. God is not necessarily a person, like a guy with a beard, right? Like the way people portray it. It is a supreme intelligence that's behind everything that exists in the universe, including the creation from the beginning of times. So going back to my question, so if we don't take anything, all the details from this chapter, we can take that science and religion is not conflicting. And they use logic, they use facts from science to prove that such beliefs that people have as religious people, when they take things literally, does not make sense. And why should we live in something that doesn't make sense to our mind? Why we should deny that the earth goes around the sun every year if it's already proven? Why we should deny that? Why God would want us to deny that, to be a spiritual person? It doesn't make sense. God created us intelligent beings. Why we should deny this part of us to be a spiritual person doesn't make any sense. Compartmentalization and division inside of ourselves creates diseases, creates disharmony and problems. And so we are supposed to use our brain when we are exercising our spirituality. We are supposed to question things because this is part of our evolution. Make sense of things inside of us, in our own private experiences, in our private lives, and also around us and the world around us is part of our spiritual growth. Spiritual growth involves intellectual growth. They are different things, but they are somehow part of the evolution of the spirit. So the definition of spirit is an intelligent being, right? When they started to develop mediumship as we know it, because mediumship happens since the beginning of time, since the ancient times, but as we know it, through what we call modern spiritualism, back with the Fox families and all those phenomena that happened in Europe as well, and in the 18th century, what happened is like they started to ask questions, very objective questions, and the spirits answered. So in the beginning, they would answer through physical phenomena. So, for example, the Fox sisters, they developed a system of answers, yes and no. One tap to yes, two taps to no. And the spirits would make noise according with the answers that they are giving to them, because they didn't have their mediumship developed enough to understand through their mind. Because now we understand that the mediumship, the communication between spirits, is through the mind. We know it. We get the answer in our own brain. And that's telepathy. We can communicate with each other through telepathy as well, right? Sometimes people are in different parts of the planet and they think on one another. All of a sudden one calls, it's like, oh, I was thinking of you. Like how like what a coincidence. This is not a coincidence. This is telepathy, right? So it's the same way that spirits, discarnated, communicate with us. But this whole concept of mediumship and understanding what spirit is, and mediumship helps us to understand that the main attribute to spirit is intelligence. They are intelligent individual beings. They preserve their individuality after they die. And they are intelligent. What means being intelligent? They are capable of thinking. They are capable of understanding languages and communicate in ways that is more evolved than other animals or inanimate beings. So where I'm going with this is that all that has, if we are intelligence, if we have our essence is this, which is the spirit, is intelligent, why the creation of the universe would not have this supreme intelligence behind it? And why we would abort, absolutely neglect this essential part of ourselves when we exercise or develop or practice our spirituality. Would not make any sense. It would be the same as asking a mother to give birth and giving up their femininity or something like that. Like, it doesn't make sense. It's part of being a mother or giving birth to be in their physicality, to be a woman, to have the biology of a woman. So it's just a silly example I gave. It's not the best example, but it's somehow asking ourselves to depart from our essence, which is being an intelligent being, being able to develop ourselves or to be close to God, which is the creator of all this universe, is the most absurd thing. And that's what many religions are based on. So that's the beauty of spiritualism, that came to bring back the wholeness that we are as individuals and as universe. So things are not contradicting. Science and religion science and spirituality are not contradicting. We can think and we can feel and we can be spirit and physical at the same time. Things have different aspects. It doesn't mean they are conflictive, right? So, and that's somehow the essence of this whole book, actually. But in about these chapters about the creation, which is one of the points that really made science and religion to split, and was the cause of people being killed, people having conflicts, and all this, those problems that we experienced for centuries because of this kind of mentality. What is written in the Bible is literal, and we need to take it as it is, and without questioning. Or being a spiritual religious person means that you cannot think, you cannot question, you cannot be a scientist or critical exercise or critical thinking. And this is absolutely not true. Any questions or comments about that?
No, it was good. Good. Good input.
I think that's been always the problem I've had with religion, that, it's just, you are not supposed to think. You're not supposed to, you're just, that just never really resonated with me. And you're not supposed to question.
That's the same thing I had with my pastor. I used to always tell him that. He used to be like, "You come to the church?" I'm like, "I'm gonna come, pastor, but I got some questions." Don't get me. I said, "Because you're gonna get me. I got some questions." I used to always say that.
Yeah.
And that was my main problem, because I got these. It's a problem because of the questions. It's like,
Yeah.
It's like me learning Latin when I started in the mythical sense, and just learning that they didn't have the science. They didn't know,
Mhm.
those stories got me. So it's hard.
Yeah, and now everything is like, all it takes is for us to dig further, to look for scientific explanations or logical explanations. We do our own research. Everybody's, of course, like researchers, like in the daily lives is a different story than the scientific research, which takes time. There's methodology, there's previous knowledge behind it. There's a lot of things that accumulates, and but as long as we go through this realm, we can have a scientific mind in our daily lives. right? So exploring things, observing. What's the basics of science is observing reality and questioning and using our critical thinking to trace conclusions. That's how science started, by observing reality, observing and thinking. That's the basis of science.
You know what I'm starting to take a grasp of now, like the what is it? The Neville Goddard is that there's God is in you, like you are like that. I'm starting to grasp onto that concept, even though it's kind of hard for me to digest even that, but it's just like me just believing in that because it's like, you know, like I'm just starting to have to trying to go towards that because all of the stuff that all of the stuff that's going on in all religions, it's like in every religion there's something going on. So it's just like having to hone on to that belief that God is just in you, and you just have to, you know, grasp on the something out there, like, you know, just having that there's something more powerful in the world, and just believe in something else that's more powerful and existing, and, you know, just not listen to all the stories. This, you know.
Yeah, but I mean, I understand what you say. I think people also take that literally, and that's another problem. So people are sometimes are going on the opposite ways, like God is in you. They feel that they are God. So that's not it, right?
Oh no, not to say, not to take it in like as if they are, yeah, not to take it like literally like they are, you know, like I am God and they rule the world, like not like that, but just
No,
like in you, like, yeah, no, not like that.
but somehow this idea that people are really doing right now has some of this kind of tendencies to, and yes, we can be humble and can be recognize the germ of God inside of us. We are part of God, as everything else in nature is, in universe is. Um, but the spirits have individuality. When we do mediumship, we see that, right? Spirits have individuality. The spirit of Elizabeth's grandma is very different than spirit of her mother or her grandfather. Everyone has different personalities and different traces.
Yeah,
So why God would not have their own personality, right?
absolutely.
Yeah. So it's not the way we used to understand as a person, like a body, like entity. No, it's more energetic, the same way that spirit is energetic, but it's the most evolved and the spirit that has ever been, the only spirit that has ever been eternal, from the eternity, and everything else is derived from that. So that's the only difference. But yes, but we when in the Bible they mentioned the Holy Spirit, that the Holy Spirit would come and be with us. That the body is the temple of the Holy Spirit. That's what it is. Like because the part of God, the light of God, the love of God can be inside of us. We can be instruments to God, and we can be used by Him depending on the choices we make, depending on our free will. We because everything is about free will. We have freedom to be at service of God or not. But we need to also recognize that to be humble, to understand that we are just a small part, even though we are much more than religion wants us to be in the past. But we need to love ourselves, we need to respect ourselves, we need to set boundaries, we don't need to be martyrs. All that's different from many religions in the past. But we still need to be humble to understand that just take science. When we go through science, it's easy to be humbled. We see how huge this universe is and how complex this universe is compared with who we are, right? And we are not the most evolved or the only inhabitants in this universe. So how could we be the top of the top, the know-it-all, the absolute detainers of truth in this huge universe that we don't even know, right? We don't even understand. We don't even have the capacity to understand all and explain all. So the balance between self-acceptance and self-love and understanding, being able to see God inside of us, and also being humble and being dependent on God, being submissive to God, that's it. That's how enlightened spirits work, and that's how we need to thrive towards, because that's how we become mature spiritually. It's the same as a little child. A toddler thinks that the universe goes around them, right? Everything's about them, and their will is the most important thing. But as we grow, we understand that we need to follow rules, we need to follow directions from the teachers or our boss, the institutions, the society we are inserted in. We need to conform, and we have limits. If you don't conform, if you don't obey some limits, we have punishments. And there's consequences, right? And it's not just not to go to jail, it's because there are consequences. If we unleash our instincts and do whatever comes to our mind, kill each other all the time and punch and do all sorts of violence, and what's happening? Our species is going to be extinct. We're going to kill each other and we're all going to die. So there's consequences, and consequences that affects all of us. So, and that's exactly what is the same way, the same kind of balance that we need to look for when we exercise and when we develop our spirituality. We are not the super powerful that we can do whatever, believe whatever, and dictate what is our truth, and that's going to be our truth. There are things that are true besides of independent of we believing or not. The law of gravity is what it is. If you don't believe it, you cannot believe it, but you have the right not to believe, but it's going to exist anyways, right? So and that's the difference between, we cannot go to any extreme. All the extremes are not good. Balance is the only measurement of health and in anything we do. So that's all we need to keep in mind as well. So the fact that some religions are cause like people to be castrated and diminished doesn't mean that they don't have some kind of teachings. So you just need to strain and take what is useful and what is distorted, and use our critical thinking to separate things. And sometimes it's all about interpretation, which is what we are seeing in this book. And in this chapter, they said the interpretation of the Genesis of what they was written in the Bible, in the Genesis, about the creation of the universe is the problem. It's not what the content itself is, the interpretation of it is a problem. Okay, so let's close our group. Let's do a final prayer and finish for today. Dear God, thank you for this day, for the opportunity to grow and to learn and to read all those wonderful knowledge and wisdom from spirits. Thank you for your wisdom and to helping us in this new era where we are more evolved as humans, as beings, as spiritual beings, helping us to expand our minds and our horizons in our understanding of the world and of the spirituality and everything, in the understanding of the universe in general. Thank you for allowing us to have access to those beautiful knowledges and share with others and applying our daily lives. Thank you for your unconditional love. Amen. All right, so I'll see you all next week. For those who are seeing us online from home, we are going to be back next Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific time, and you can join us through my Facebook page, Revenant, or my website, revenant.world, and it's free of charge. Everybody is welcome to participate. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next Monday.